Hello, I'm Chris Williams from Spiritual Acceleration.
Hello, and I'm Tracey McPhee, also a Spiritual Acceleration.
And we're the teachers of the Awaken the Shaman course. Later this month, it's coming up in a few weeks' time. And so we're here again just to answer any questions that anyone's got about the course. So if you've got questions, please submit them in the chat and we'll see them. And otherwise, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the aspects of the training and program. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to do this. I have a lot of fun on the course in particular. So I think it lets us touch some really interesting material. Yeah, and I think that we were just talking before we came on, sort of how this course is a really good bridge. It's a really good bridge into the foundations course, but it's also a really good bridge of this work more into sort of everyday life. Because the psychic awareness sort of training, the intuitive view, is good about sort of getting people to be able to open up. And that's where a lot of you already are now, is you're actually awake and aware of all these sorts of different dimensions of energy. But Awaken the Shaman is sort of about sort of bridging that into action. Once you can track something, what do you then do with it? And what responsibilities do we have to the energies in people around us in the natural world? And it's an interesting, we become an active participant, because we actually, that's the truth of it. We already are active participants in this energetic dance of life, and learning to sort of navigate and actually intentionally sort of align it more with what the divine wants is part of our path as sort of healers and shamans. So we're going to talk a bit about that. Hello and welcome to everyone joining us. If you have any questions about the course, Awaken the Shaman, or any aspect of shamanism, put them in the chat and we will probably see them. I think so.
I just had a feeling as well, Chris, as we were speaking then, because here in the UK it's quite late now, and it's actually, well, it's not late, it's just after 8 p.m, but it's actually completely pitch dark, and I just got a real sense of the changing of the seasons, and for some reason I just felt a real connection to that, and I thought that for me, I think that this time around when I do with you Awaken the Shaman, I'm going to be aware of that, and when we're tracking into like different nature things, I want to find out a little bit more about how it feels for them, like how they mature through the seasons and that kind of. I think that'll be nice for me.
Very nice. I think it's funny you should say that. I was thinking about that today as well. Sort of one of the core aspects of shamanism is that it's in touch with the cycles of nature as it expresses itself in life. And I think more and more it looks like our human kind of technological civilization has gone in a direction where we really emphasize the sort of linear pathway of things, but really, and a sort of, we're very goal focused, and it's sort of all about moving forward towards something. We can, it's a sort of linear expression of thought that we've really kind of emphasized, but actually life tends to move in circles and spirals. And the older cultures were very in tune with seasons and with the sort of sense of change in a sort of a cycle. And one of the things I think is really fascinating to look at energetically are these cycles in people and in the world. When we tune into these sorts of cycles and relationships, you can see there's actually a very intelligent harmony underneath the way that things kind of move throughout the seasons, the way things grow, flourish, withdraw, thaw, and then are born again has an incredible complexity and intelligence. That cycling actually leads to an incredible sort of resilience, endurance, it's all the movement of life in a very complex, spiraling way. And you can see there's a harmony underneath it, there's an intelligence. And that intelligence and harmony is what we're attempting to align ourselves with. And what we can then begin to perceive when we can perceive touching that harmony is what's out of harmony, what has gone against or is resisting that cycle of flow and change. And that's the stuff that we're really interested in as shamans and healers, is what in a person, usually it's people we're looking at. Sometimes it might be a place, a house, a piece of land, an area in human consciousness. What about that issue has stuck and resisted and held on instead of moving in change and harmony. And that's where our work is going to go in, and we have to get our awareness to bridge into that, to understand the sort of how it's holding in the distortion, and then what we need to do to unravel it back into that intelligence. And actually, if we can align ourselves with that harmony and intelligence, we're aligned with the movement of life. And that means there's a lot of resource and energy coming with us to facilitate that movement. So a big sort of secret to the energy work is actually sort of aligning yourself with the current of what wants to happen sort of on a higher level. And then it's like we just kind of get out of the way, but we're sort of very involved. And then it sort of can move and change and transform, because it's actually life doing the work. We just happen to be the vehicle for it.
And it's just that sense of opening up, stepping back out of the way, and then allowing flow to just, and to do more being than doing, because it's like everything that the trees do, that the seasons do, it's without force, without effort, and it's just aligning yourself with that and then allowing. But it's that sense of stepping back. What is helpful in my life day to day is just that kind of the sense of when you get a deeper awareness of those natural rhythms. And for me, I'm really enjoying at the moment the permanence of nature. It feels to me the permanence of nature helps me, because I have daily struggles and daily whatevers, and it just helps them to feel less significant when I tune into the permanence of the backdrop.
I completely with you there. And for me, nature's always been a sort of, I think it's because it brings us back into that flow, into that sort of pattern of sort of like something is kind of living and breathing in these cycles and moving towards life. And you can see that nature is actually, I was talking to a botanist a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me that when they first tried growing trees in these biodynamic domes, so these big domes where sort of they're kind of huge glass domes with lots of different varieties of plants that just over certain kind of grow lots of things they wouldn't probably be able to grow, but they don't have any wind. And when they first tried to grow trees, the trees would grow for 50 years and then they die and fall over. And it was actually, they found that they really, some of the environmental stresses are really necessary for nature to flourish, because it has these sort of complex relationships with the environment. So things like, I'm going to say that nature is very resilient, but it's more than resilient. It actually uses everything in the environment, becomes sort of, nature can survive incredible devastation and then come back. You can see that there's a wildfire and then actually things grow again. And I think it's because nature's very much aligned with the sort of divine patterning of life. It's a divine expression that it can do that. It actually moves towards life, and it moves, I think when we resonate with us, the thing in us that is also moving towards life, the deeper pathway of the divine, sort of, we get more in tune with that as a rhythm. We get out of tune with it. So that's what I sort of also take from nature when I'm investing in is trying to do with the trees or the sea, feeling those rhythms. And having a sort of psychic awareness deepens those relationships. In a sense, you can sort of tune in more deeply with nature and merge more deeply with those patterns. That's the story. We'll be doing some of that on the course as well, exploring those relationships. There's so much to learn there. Yeah, really cool. You had a couple of questions.
I did. One question we've kind of touched on a little bit, but is like, how will this transfer to my everyday life? How will taking this course transfer to my everyday life?
I think the thing that I'll add to that is that by learning to sort of bridge more deeply into the energetics and be able to get our awareness more deeply into sort of these other unseen realms of life, we actually go deeper into life. So it deepens us in life. It sort of opens us up on more levels to life that's there, including other beings, other consciousness, other nature rhythms and spirits, but also just a deeper sense of life. So it tends to bridge us more into that. And as part of what we're doing, whenever we whenever we move more into presence and awareness, we become aware of where we are numb and blocked off from life. And then we have some tools. This course gives us some tools to be able to work with that. So it's another place, it's another way of working with wherever we're stuck or resistant to life. We can get our awareness in, and then actually we have a process, we have tools to be able to unravel it and sort of become more open again to life in those places. And that's an exciting dance. So that's how I think a big part of this translates into daily life. For me, it means that I can talk to nature. I can actually have a very direct relationship with trees, with plants, with spirits, with different things.
That is definitely something that I would echo, and I'm really on my journey with that, and I want that to sort of like deepen. And I find that I'm the more I know about my environment, the more it shows me about myself. But another thing that I would say as well is in terms of sort of like practicalities, because we do touch on working with the light and bringing in the light, that for me was like really helpful as just part of my like spiritual hygiene.
Nice.
And it gave me tools as well of the beginnings of my like day-to-day energy work that I can just apply to my everyday situations. So I think that's for me, that was a useful, and a valuable takeaway.
You can begin when there's something going on in a relationship or something at work. You have some tools to be able to work with things in a sort of more in a different way, right? As well as just sort of processing the emotion, we can do some clearing on the energetics, and that can be very useful. It can be very useful because we're all in this sort of complex, human, messy, interpenetrating kind of energetic phenomena with each other. We're all kind of triggering each other. We're all sort of lighting each other up in certain ways and becoming enmeshed and bringing up our issues. That's what relationships do. And then once we're activated, a big part of our work that's a theme in all of Bonnie's teachings is to be able to actually feel and let go into what's happening. That's the way we can really get our awareness into where we're stuck and where we can let go. And then as well as that, once we've got some sort of energetic tools, like what we'll explore in Awaken the Shaman for moving energy, we can begin to release these in a more sort of psychic way, in a more sort of energetic way, as well as just opening and unraveling the feeling of emotion, which is also a really key teaching. There's a lot of very practical things. It's a practical course. And Tracey, did you have anything else you wanted to ask that we had sent in?
I had another question, and that was, do I have to be psychic or intuitive to take the course?
Nice, good question. Why don't you go for that one?
I would say that if you have an interest in this, you likely are intuitive or psychic. And like winding back from that, we know that we all actually are, regardless of whatever blocks we may feel we have. But the thing is, for me, if you, you might have just stumbled across this, but I doubt that you would have even stayed listening this long if it didn't resonate with something that's quite deep inside of you. So I would say that if you're actually here watching this, the chances are that you are a shaman.
Yeah, and it's a muscle. So whatever we're all of our basic sensing is also quite psychic. So our everyday sensing of life, that we're living in this sort of incredible tapestry of energy, we're already sensing energy. It's already part of the way we're perceiving things, whether it's unconscious or conscious. It's just part of the way that we're actually perceiving all of this.
Because when you think about smell, how does smell work?
Yeah,
that's just as weird.
It's true, isn't it?
It's just as
abstract. But it's and whatever sensing you do have, it's a muscle. So taking it through a process where you are practicing doing it, and in our course we do that in the workshops and then in pods, in small groups where we're practicing sensing into what's going on with someone, and then finding the emotional frequency that's there, and then if that's what's going on, and then clearing it. You actually learn to engage this muscle, and we do lots of exercises to sort of prime the system for that, to sort of create the right conditions, which also include releasing things which are particularly stuck there, in sort of our perceptual system, but also making sure the system has enough energy and is balanced in a particular way to allow that kind of information to be processed by the system. But it's a muscle, and you grow that muscle by doing it. So the course is a place where we can really practice that and begin to really flex those muscles, it's psychic muscles.
I think for me as well, once I did begin to get a sense of it, it's like it seemed to me like it was almost like magic or something. And it gave me a bit of an intrigue and an interest in myself, because I started sort of thinking, oh, I can do that. What else I can do?
Yeah.
It was like just suddenly finding that I was a cordon bleu, that I could cook or something. And I was like, I never knew that was available to me. I wonder what else.
I think it's the nice thing about hanging out in groups with people that are also sort of moving in that direction, is something is resonating together in the group, and it sort of amplifies. It amplifies. So we're all suddenly interested in it. Our awareness is moving towards that layer, and it sort of lights up whatever natural faculties you already have. Yeah.
And there's no doubt that practicing in a group, it's like you can go away, you can study, you can meditate, you can do your practices, but the group energy does definitely amplify and take us to different places where we are, even though it's us, because we are part of the group, it is certainly helpful in those first stages, trying to access things, because it does definitely lift you up and make more available.
And for me, as well as you, and I think everyone, it's when you've got a purpose for something. When someone's in front of you going, I've got something going on, can you help? It means there's a sort of when there's a use for those gifts or a use for that energy, then it really switches on. Then it's really like suddenly there's a lot of alignment towards actually that expression. So I think a lot of this work is about, I like that word, like alignment. It's another resonance, but alignment with a sort of, with the divine's intention for healing or for transformation, and then actually you become like a vessel, you become more useful. So the more you use what's there and use it in a way which is of service, it tends to develop, and it develops quite quickly. So this is
available.
Yeah.
And another word that I really like as well, Chris, is remembrance. Because it 100% is just a remembrance for us. Because again, we've all been around a number of times, and for sure you wouldn't be here or even listening. You would have like either freaked out or tuned out after 2 or 3 minutes of coming across these two weirdos talking about trees and smelling and things, if there wasn't something in there that was being really reawakened and remembered.
It's very true. It's very true.
The thing is as well, in terms of recommending the course, it's just like I remember when I did it, it was just really good fun as well, and it was quite a nice indulgence for me. It was just like a nice way to spend a weekend.
We have room to explore sort of tracking and different exercises that I think are really valuable. And some of the things that we'll be emphasizing in this are those sorts of energy awareness, waking up exercises where we learn to really get our awareness into different layers of someone's energy field, different sort of layers of sort of the energetic world, and bridge our awareness in so we can begin to have a sense of something and do it in a way which is really supported. So often it's quite scary to do that. It feels like just sort of open the door to the unknown, which is actually what we're all doing all the time, but we just sort of have different levels of comfort and defense around it. So this is a way of sort of doing that in a way where we have some encouragement, and then we can begin to stretch ourselves and feedback. So we get feedback on what we're sensing. Because Tracey and I are tracking with you, tracking what we're going into and holding and putting into it. So we get a lot of feedback, and that's really valuable. It sort of means that we're a bit more available to open into the unknown, which is a real gift. That's sort of the real key skill of sort of surrendering and opening into the unknown. That we're all doing that. We're all doing that always, deeper and deeper into mystery. Open back into what we are. Do you have a final question, So, three on the
I
list.
do. I do. And it was somebody was reporting that they had a bad experience at one point when they'd opened up and they weren't sure what they'd opened up to. So they felt quite sort of afraid.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. I mean, we kind of touched on that just now, but there's sort of more support in what and sort of there's more support and feedback into what we're opening into. And often what happens when we begin to open into the sort of energetic world is that all of the conditioning we have inside, so all of the deep fear we have inside that we haven't looked at, that we've been suppressing or avoiding, actually resonates out into the whole rest of life. It's already doing that. It's actually resonating into our life and aligning us with sort of the same frequency, experiences, sort of the same matches in other people, so that will sort of activate and bring up that sort of to work it out, to sort of bring up and activate that sort of energy. So we tend to do that in the sort of the more astral layers of things as well. And a lot of what people run into is actually their own unconscious fear, trauma, and conditioning projected onto things. So it's very valuable to have feedback and support there. We can run into beings, but again, they're actually not such a big problem. It tends to be our own sort of fear around them that causes the drama. So it's a projection of our own internal stuff, and it's really good to get really clear about that. It makes everything so much easier if we know we're acting out some of our own suppressed sort of deep conditioning. We have a way of looking at it and a way of then working with it. But basically, it's really good to be able to learn that process and to really know that actually nothing can really harm you. It's more that you can generate an experience mostly out of your own conditioning. I mean, there are things out there in these worlds that are aligned with what we say, like negativity and deep separateness from the core of divinity. But that's also part of divine expression, and it's an interesting subject. But most of what happens tends to be our own projected fear and drama around it. That's what it tends to bring up. But it's really good to get to sort of explore that and explore it in a group where we can sort of look at it and track it together. And so that if that is happening for you, somebody can say, this is what's going on. But it's an interesting part of the process. It's an interesting part of the process.
And I would say that if after having that experience that turned out to be not so kind of supportive or encouraging, then and you are still questioning or wanting to know more or go further, then I think that this is a very, very safe space to do that in.
Absolutely. Yep. And there's a perspective shift as well, because a lot of those experiences are sort of like initiations in a sort of way. They're confronting us with challenge and with sort of pressure on a more sort of psychic level. And traditionally, those are often part of a shamanic kind of initiation in some way. In some cultures, getting very ill is seen as the sort of shamanic initiation. In other cultures, going through sort of deep kind of pain or life crisis. And actually, not all shamanic initiations are like that. So there are also initiations which are more.
Don't take any notice of that bit.
But it's more to say that a lot of what can look scary can actually be embraced as part of the sort of growing process, and that by being willing to face what we're frightened of, our internal demons and the darkness, we become sort of stronger and more capable of holding and aligning with the light. And that's actually sort of part of our development, is actually life will set that up. So I think a lot of those challenges are actually very useful, very, very useful, because they ultimately will reveal what the truth is of that. And which is often something letting go and waking up back into its own nature. Yeah. Very cool. Well, it feels like we're sort of complete. If there are any questions, please put them to the Facebook. Otherwise, I think we'll leave it there. We will be pushing again. If you're working to come out with us. We'll do a Zoom meeting on the 19th, I think. And we'll be talking on Zoom. It might also be nice to do a sort of journey path. But that's all from me.